And we're back, and it is COMP392 Advanced Graphics, and it's week 2, lesson 2, part 3. This is kind of our day 2 of our broadcast this second week, right? And like I said to the people that came in early today, or a little earlier, I really want to talk about assignment number 1, and we'll talk about what that is. It's the first assignment for some of you that you've had with me, so it's going to be something new. For some of you. Some of you know me, so you know what I expect, right? But let's bring it up. If you want to find it, it should be available to you up on eCentennial, right? And it's called The Cube Man. The Cube Man, all right? I know it's kind of crazy, and you might think it's boring for some of you, Stephen, but you know, you can challenge yourself on this one, and we'll talk about what you can do to make it interesting, okay? All right, let's talk about due dates and values. So this thing is worth 10%. Let's do week 4, which is Friday, February the 5th. Lots of time, okay, between now and then. And again, there's a reason why I put things 2 weeks out. One, not everyone has access to all the tools all the time. You don't have a laptop, and you still need to do TypeScript and blah, blah, and you need to do it here in the school. And there's only so many computers that have that available. I have to give you a couple of weeks just to kind of get a computer, work on the stuff, you know, whatever, okay? So let's do Friday, February 5th at midnight. So anything after midnight, 20%. For every additional day, 10%. So the first day, 20%. Every additional day, 10%, right? And it'll close, the assignment will close on the Monday at midnight. So that means if you can't get it done by Monday, don't bother, right? A little bit of a different policy this time, and it's part of the pressure that I get sometimes from administration. I'm just being honest with you and telling you this, to make sure everything is taken care of within time frame, okay? I kind of agree with it too, because, you know, I mean, if you can't get it done within a few days, something's wrong. Unless, again, I'll say this again, for assignments and all that kind of stuff, unless you get some kind of letter of accommodation because you're sick, something happened, you know, whatever, there's always leeway for somebody who has that, all right? If you have a problem, right, like a legitimate problem that you come talk to me ahead of time, you know, you're good. Otherwise, it'll just close and you won't be able to submit past Monday, all right? Okay, so what is this thing you're building? You're going to use the 3JS JavaScript library and TypeScript. Okay, it's a requirement. It's not an option. All right, so it's not like you can say, well, what if I just use JavaScript and 3JS but not TypeScript? No, 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 no. That's what we're doing in this course, right? We're using the best and leading edge web technologies, right? You're going to create a web application that displays a 3D humanoid character, right? But the character is just going to be composed with a bunch of cubes. All right, so think about a cube-like character, right? The character is going to have a bunch of cube meshes arranged in a humanoid shape, and humanoid means human-like, 2 arms, 2 legs, a head, all right, and a torso. Please don't try and come up with something weird like you know, a 3-headed dog or something like that. That's not this. This is not this assignment. It's neat, but it's not what I'm asking for. Okay, so humanoid character sounds easy, all right. On-screen controls, we've seen those before. We can use dat GUI again. Will allow the user to rotate the character in any direction, and the user will be able to use the controls to change the color properties of cube materials as a group. Okay, that's it. That's why you have to do 10%. It's due 2 weeks from now on Friday, February the 5th. Let's go into some detail because the devil, okay, let me take it back again. I always do this. God is in the details, all right? Okay, see, I always say the devil's in the details, and it's bad. And the details are really, really important, right? So let's take a look at this, right? So, so the main scene will include the following components: a helper axis, which we've seen already. You've kind of got this. We did this the first thing we looked at, right? And it's going to display X, Y, and Z axis on the actual screen, right? That's what it's going to do, right? A control panel using the dat GUI interface, and that's written by the people at Google, right? And we talked about that little control panel in the right-hand corner is what I'm talking about here, right? And I'll show you the example when we get into it. It allows the user to rotate the humanoid character in the scene across any axis. So I can rotate across the x-axis, the y-axis, or the z-axis. All right, that's one part of the requirement here. And modify its rotation speed, so I can move fast or slow, right, across those axes. The other thing is the control panel will also allow the user to change the color of the cubes that compose the character to random color scheme, right, or other fixed color scheme. So let's say I click a button, and all of a sudden the cubes, all the cubes are randomly colored, or they're all, you know, they're colored. They go from you know, one kind of color scheme, maybe red and black, you know, as an example, to white and green, you know, something else, right? It's up to you how you want to do it, right? I'm going to make it so it's creative for you. You can make it as creative as you like in this case, in this case, right? Obviously, random colors is the easier option, right? Way easier. If you do random colors, you're golden, right? It's just random colors. A humanoid character composed of various sized cubes. And we're talking cube primitives, cube geometries, all right? That's all they are, right? So they might be stacked one on top of the other to create the character. That's what they're going to look like, right? The character should have a head, like I said, a torso, so the body, 2 arms and 2 legs, and the character should be standing upright with its arms out to each side like this, almost like in a cross-like, position. Why? Because if we ever want to create some kind of bones for the character one day, maybe not now, but whatever, we can actually add additional controls to give the player some, or the character some motion. Okay, each cube mesh that the humanoid character is composed of, right, should have a material applied to it that provides a predetermined color. So I don't want the original colors of the character to be random. It's got to be a predetermined color scheme. So when I first kick off the application, I'm going to see some kind of basic color that you assign to it, right? Now, some people will make it all one color, all red, all black, all white. That's okay. Not really interesting, but it's okay. Some people will split it off to make it more interesting and therefore more marks, right? For example, the head might be something like a peach color, right? And you might have, the torso one color, the legs another color, and the arms another color. You could do that too, right? That's a little bit more interesting. So you're probably going to get more points for something like that, okay? So it says here, not random. Please don't make it random. If you make it random, you'll lose marks because that's just, it's kind of a cheat. When you predetermine the colors, you have to program that, and that takes extra effort. That's why I'm asking you to do that. Okay, some kind of ground plane that the human character appears to be standing on. The ground plane will not rotate and remains fixed regardless of the humanoid character's rotation, so it can't move. Right? It's gonna be a fixed ground plane, right? A perspective camera component that allows the user to view all the components in the scene. Now, that's pretty simple. So that means I can always see the ground plane, and I can always see my rotating character, no matter what you do, right? An ambient light that provides basic illumination for the scene. Just make sure that the light's not too bright to white out the scene. If it's too bright and you can't see anything, it's not a good light. You'll lose some marks there. A spotlight that is pointed at the humanoid character, and the spotlight will provide additional light and cast shadows on the ground plane. Okay, and that's really it for the actual scene. Any questions around the scene that I want to cast? So all I want is a humanoid character made up of a bunch of cubes. That's all it is, right? Seems simple, right? But like I said, variation can, I didn't tell you what's the angle of the character. I'm not telling you, how high he is. Please don't make it too small. I don't want to make the character this big. So, one thing I didn't say is, the character has to be visible. If I can't see the character, that's a fail to me, right? It's got to be visible. So if it's like micronized, right? So like the cubes are like pixels, that's bad, right? You got to make the character so I can see him. Okay. Other things in addition to the character, aside from the actual end result. So whatever's in this piece here that says the main scene, besides that, there's other things I want. One thing I want is, your internal documentation and site structure for your program has to be done well. And actually, one thing I missed here is it's 5 marks internal documentation, and I didn't do this. And it's an additional 4 marks for site structure. But it's actually it's in the marks, so it'll actually be up top there. I just didn't put it in here properly because it's just what happens. Anyways, so what is it? What do I mean by this? So make sure your program header for each module of your application that includes the source file name, the author's name, the last modified by, date last modified, your program description, revision history, all that stuff. I want a little header for the top of each of your files. So if you have 5 modules, I want a header for each of them that tells me what those things are, right? I want you to ensure that you include a header for all your classes and methods. So if you make a special class for yourself, this humanoid monster that you're making, right? Did I say monster? Humanoid character. I want you to describe what this thing is about. Okay, I don't want long descriptions. All right, so but something that describes what the class is for. What did you make this? And especially for methods as well. If I make a method, tell me what it does. I don't need you to go lead down line by line and tell me this is a for loop. I'm not looking for that. That's silly, right? It should really document itself, right? But at the end of the day, so when I look at the code structure, it should be all human readable, if you will, right? Okay, numbers E and F. of part 2 is I want your folder structure to be organized, like we talked about before. Some people hand in stuff and it's completely unorganized. Even though I've given you a template and everything else, somehow it's not what I asked for, right? So please make sure that your folder structure separates your view, which is your HTML and CSS, from your logic, your JavaScript, and that each folder is organized appropriately, right? Finally, you must use TypeScript to build your application, and that's worth 2 marks from a site structure perspective. Now, it seems like small, but it also gives me a hint of whether you're paying attention in class or not, right? So please use TypeScript. Part 3, share your files on GitHub. We talked about GitHub a bunch of times, and I even gave you free marks as a lab to sign up for GitHub, right? Well, here's where you're going to pay me back. 4 marks for GitHub. And how do I separate those 4 marks? 2 marks if you just put stuff up on GitHub at the last minute, because you know what? You don't know what you're doing and you just want to put it up on GitHub and get some marks. 2 marks out of 4, right? The other 2 marks is if you actually use GitHub the way it's supposed to be used, which means I have a bunch of commits. I do something and there's a commit. I have another commit and another commit and another commit. If I have a bunch of commits, every time you do a function or add a feature, you add a commit. That's how I want you to use GitHub. And I'll be looking for that on your GitHub repository, right? So that's your GitHub, 4 marks for that. Here's another one. Your application must be deployed to a cloud service, any cloud service. DigitalOcean, Microsoft Azure, Heroku, pick, right? Just let me know where it is and give me the link, right? That's worth 4 marks just for cloud deployment. I don't want you to deploy on the school server somewhere, okay? And the student hub, the student web, okay? Please don't do that. It's to be deployed on a cloud service. This is another piece of our, this is hitting one of our course outcomes, okay? One of our course outcomes is to be kind of leading edge in the way that you're going to deploy live somewhere on the cloud, all right? And I'm going to show you some of that today. We're going to talk about cloud deployment today, all right? But there's a bit of setup for this, so don't wait 2 weeks from now to fix up your cloud, right? Start working with the cloud early, okay? And if you don't know anything about cloud service, don't worry, right? It's okay. We're going to talk about it today, right? Okay, optional game features or application features, if you will. Provide additional detail for your humanoid character. So don't just make it out of cubes. Add some spheres, add some other things. Please don't make it too sexual, right? I've gotten things in the past when I've done something similar to this where people add sexual organs to the humanoid character. That would be a bad thing. Please don't do that, all right? Or don't add things like to make it not a humanoid character, like a tail and wings, okay? That would be bad, all right? Don't make it a demon, all right? Make it humanoid. Just add more detail. That's what I'm asking for, right? That's for extra bonus points. Include textures for your humanoid character to make him or her more realistic. So let's say a texture for the face, so it looks like a face. And you can do that very simply, even if it's a cube, right? So I'll leave it to you. I'm not going to teach you the stuff I'm asking you to do. These are bonus features. This is for you to research and try and figure out on your own, right? That's why they're called bonus, right? Okay, submitting your work. This is important because at times I've gotten stuff that's way out of whack here. Okay, 1, a zip archive of your complete project files, all right, on eCentennial. That's where it's supposed to go, okay? And I don't want a RAR archive or some other archive, zip archive. I should actually highlight them, put zip. And it's got to be on eCentennial, right? Don't email me, right? That will be very bad, okay? A link, here's a link to your project files on GitHub. So it has to be your repository on a link. I need a link to that so I can see your files. That's how I'm going to look at your files on GitHub, okay? A link to your live site on the cloud service somewhere, right? So I need to see your live site. It's got to be functional. If I don't see it live, you're going to lose your 4 marks for your deployment piece. That's 4 marks lost out of 45. That's almost 10%, right? Right there. Please make it live, which means you got to test that it works when you hand it in, right? I know it's simple and it's silly. One thing you'll notice, and if you've had me before, is there's no external documentation for this assignment 1, no external docs. So it's not like I'm asking you to do a plan or anything like that. This is a very simple assignment, right? Well, for some of you, it will be simple, right? So all I'm asking for is these 3 things: a zip archive of your complete project files, a link to your project files on GitHub, and a link to your live site on a cloud service somewhere, whether it's Heroku, Microsoft Azure, DigitalOcean, whatever it is out there that you choose to use. Just let me know. Amazon, Google platform, whatever, right? You choose what you want to use, right? Again, I don't want you to give me a live, I don't want it to be a non-cloud service. So in other words, don't sign up for something like, Rogers, right? and get a Rogers-like domain and give me a Rogers link. That's not going to satisfy my requirements, right? I want it to be a cloud service, okay? Because there's some learnings involved, guys. You're not going to use any kind of FTP service to upload your files. It's going to be all through GitHub deployment. So you're going to put up your site on GitHub, and it's going to auto-deploy right to the cloud, okay? That's how it should be. And in order for us to set that up, it takes a little bit of setup, and I'm going to show you how to do that. But that's part of the learning here. So even though we're doing 2D or advanced 3D graphics, if you will, right, what we're really doing is I'm trying to give you ancillary technologies to take something away. If this is your only course with TypeScript and JavaScript, you're going to come away knowing about cloud service. You're going to come away knowing about auto deployment, right? So it's going to be more practical for you if you go and do something else. Okay, questions around this? Around this assignment, because I'm going to stop taught this. It seems easy because it's just a cube man, right? It's not easy because there's little details that I'm going to look for, right? So please don't wait until the final week. So don't wait until week 4 of the Monday to start your assignment. Start now, because there's some stuff you need to do to set things up, your structure and everything else, right? That's what I'd like you to try and do. I know I say this every single time, but I'll be honest with you, it's just, it is what it is, right? Okay, let's talk about the cloud service before I end this particular video. So what is a cloud service, and what am I talking about anyway? So I'm just going to close this thing up. Well, there's several. If I was going to Google cloud service for those people who've never seen it before, right? And again, if you ask someone what it is, and if they don't know what it is, some of it classified as a software as a service, but really they're and it is a pay-per-use or subscription service. That's usually what it is. Now, there's a couple things that might make you feel that DigitalOcean or Azure might be the right choice for you. Okay, let me talk about those deployment options for a second. So let's go to dreamspark.com, and I want you to go back there because there's some free services for students for deployment on the cloud. Okay, let's talk about this. If you click on Microsoft Azure here on dreamspark.com, and I'm at dreamspark.com/student/software-catalog. And the way I would do that, if I was going to go to DreamSpark, if you wanted to get the same place as me, I would go to dreamspark.com. I'm just going to go there from the beginning. So here's dreamspark.com. One day when response, yay, students, right? And then there's software catalog over here, right? Click on software catalog right there. So that's how I got to it, right? So DreamSpark, students, software catalog. And if you look at the software catalog, there are some options, some really cool options too. Let's talk about this one first, this one, Microsoft Azure for DreamSpark. This is a really cool option for you as a student. If you don't have Azure Access right now, you can certainly sign up for Azure Access for free. Here's what it includes. It allows you to create web applications, right, up on Azure as a student with no fee. You can have as many of those web applications that are live as you like, which is kind of cool, right? So that's one thing that, you can do. So please sign up today if you're going to sign up. Don't wait till 1 week from now to sign up, right? And we'll talk about how to use Azure, and we'll talk about how to use Heroku. Those are the two that I'm going to be talking about. DigitalOcean is another one. It's a little bit more complex, and it's not exactly 100% free, but we'll talk about that. So again, as a part of the managed cloud service, they offer things like you can build web pages, use ASP.NET, you can have a MySQL database, all kinds of other things that you can have online, and it's free, right? So it's free as long as you're a student here at Centennial, which is a crazy good service for you to use, and there's no cost to you. Okay, one thing you can't do with it, just FYI. And by the way, you can deploy Node applications if you're taking a Node.js course like Emerging Technologies, right? You can deploy web applications on there, or Node applications. You can deploy a lot of stuff. One thing they won't give you is a Mongo database if you're going to do Emerging Technologies course, COMP392. They won't do that, and they won't give you an actual SQL database access. They won't provide that for you, right? So that's one thing that they won't give you, but they will give you MySQL through. Again, through ClearDB. That's the service that they use. Okay, so that's one thing. That's a really cool service that we'll use. We'll talk about this in a second. Okay, that's one. Second, let's talk about the GitHub Server Student Developer Pack again, because in there you get some additional stuff. So for GitHub Student Developer Pack, you get 5 free private repositories, which is kind of cool. You don't have to make your repository private, by the way. It's not necessary. But if you feel nervous about it and you don't want people stealing your code, right, you certainly can do that and share it with me as a collaborator. Okay, so that's one thing you can do. So you're going to get your own domain name through Namecheap, right? So let's say whatever your name is, like my name would be like tomsiopoulos.com or something like that, right? You can get that or whatever you want to make it. You get a free SSL, right, through domain Namecheap. All kinds of other stuff. Free Visual Studio Community 2015 and Visual Studio Online, and all kinds of other stuff here. That's something I recommend highly to get into this. So tap into this one, right? Because there's some really good services here. Namecheap and the SSL certificate is good for a year, free, right? So I think it's kind of a good service to get into. Step 2. If you notice, there's all kinds of other stuff in here that you could certainly look at. But those two are the main things that I highly recommend for you to get into, right? By the way, there's other stuff here like academic discounts for things like Pluralsight Learning Library. If you want to learn stuff through Pluralsight, there's all kinds of videos, video training, and you get a discount through doing that. And there's other things in here. Microsoft Virtual Academy. There's a lot of free videos through Microsoft Virtual Academy to learn stuff as well. You don't really need to sign up for it. There's some stuff that you can just go there and get some stuff for free. But if you look at DreamSpark, there's some really good options here. And the main two that I want to get you to look at are those two. Okay, cool. So we got DreamSpark, and we went there. The other option, the other service that I recommend that's free is Heroku, right? And I'm already part of Heroku.com, so it won't log me in. Typically, it won't do this. But what you want to do is you want to sign up, right? So, or log in. So if I click log in, you can sign up for free. And notice that it supports things like a Node.js, Ruby applications, Java, Java Beans, PHP, Python, and so on. There's all kinds of other stuff it'll support, but there's no HTML, right? Which means if you want to set up an application with Heroku, it takes a little bit of doing because you have to set up a Node application. And so as we go, I will show you how to do that. There is a bit of additional setup for this one, but it is free. And you can certainly look at, there's a ton of stuff you can learn here. On that, when you're creating your application, one thing I should also mention is that we've been talking about one ID in particular, Visual Studio Code, and we've also talked about Visual Studio itself. But what if you didn't want to deal with that? Remember I talked about brackets, brackets being an option. So brackets, if I was to type brackets.io, brackets has a really cool companion that you can also get that can help you build stuff. Let's say, for example, your brackets is your favorite ID or your editor, and you don't want to use Visual Studio Code because you just don't like it. Whatever. It's up to you really how it works out, right? But you still want to transpile. How do I do that? Well, there's a great little Node module, and I'm just going to pull it up there, called Gulp, right? And also there's another one called Grunt. Gulp and Grunt, what it is you can set up some automation, right, with Gulp and Grunt. So that way it can automatically transpile your stuff on the command line, right? So even though you're not using TypeScript with Visual Studio, you can still do TypeScript with brackets or another editor of your choice by using Gulp. And if you look at the documentation here, it's free again. It's an NPM download. You install it with NPM. So NPM install global or -g Gulp. And then what you do is you can call a task runner, similar to what we've done. And what it'll do is, it'll do a bunch of stuff, but one of the things it can do is it can watch for any changes. So once you make a change to your JS file, it'll transpile automatically to TypeScript as soon as there's a change made, right? So it simplifies some of the tasks. Now, again, in order for you to make Gulp run, you still have to fix your TypeScript problem on the command line. So if your TypeScript problem, if you're still running TypeScript 1.0.3 or something like that, it still won't help you. You still got to upgrade that TypeScript 1.75 or 1.5 at least, right? But again, another combination would be brackets and Gulp, right? That's kind of a good combination to use to do your task running. One more, and then I'll stop, I swear, right? C9 or Cloud9 is a very cool cloud service, Cloud9, that does not require any kind of ID at all. If I was going to go to Cloud9, right, as an example, and that's not the right one. That's okay. I like it, but that's not the one I want, right? It's a Cloud9.io. Cloud9, that was a weird one. Cloud9.io, I picked the wrong one. Ignore me, please. But if you go to Cloud9.io, here's something really cool. it's an IDE that's right online. So it's basically everything you want. You can even do TypeScript. You can even deploy to Heroku or Azure through the command line. It gives you a little bit of everything you need. Like if you want to do Bower, if you have a problem with your machine, all you need is cloud access, and you'll be able to do your stuff. So let's say worst case scenario, you're doing an exam and your computer fails, but you have all you have is web access. Cloud9 will be your savior because you can do almost everything with that. Okay, let me show you what I'm talking about here. It's a simple sign up and it's free. Now there's some pricing if you want to have additional, workspaces. I think you get 2 free workspaces when you use Cloud9. Okay, so that's kind of a really cool service. Let's sign in. And typically I can sign in with something like a GitHub, right? Even if you don't want to sign in, it uses OAuth. One day. There we are. And I'm in, right? So all I did was sign in with GitHub here. Now I've got a couple of services or workspaces up online already, and I can certainly delete these workspaces here because I'm using it as a free workspace, right? So if I wanted to kill this workspace, right? So I can go here, and if I go back down here, I can delete not my account. Oof, that's not what I want. I want to delete my workspace, right? I can certainly go down here and delete each workspace that I have. So go back to Cloud9 for a second, and as long as I'm logged in, so again, I'm going to go back to my dashboard for a second. I can go into my workspace. I can add and remove a workspace pretty simply. But let's create one for you together. Let's do it together, guys. So I'm going to create a new workspace. And again, you can sign in for free. And let's say I want to call this workspace, I can give it a name. Like my name today will be a 3JS demo. Right, here we are. And it says the workspace name can only have lowercase letters, numbers, underscore, and dashes. Let's try that. So 3JS demo, right? And that's for me, right? And then I can either make it public or private. Private is, you'd have to pay for that. Notice that there's a template I can choose. I can choose a custom template, HTML5, a Node.js template, whatever I want that suits my needs, right? I can do custom as well. Let's leave it at custom and see what it does. So custom, and then create my workspace. It's going to ask me some questions. It's like a wizard that it will go through, right? Okay, so it's going to create a Linux container for me online, right? And then what I have is a fully integrated environment, right? Where I can create a space. Now take a look at this. What I get, it's kind of cool, right? Here's my Cloud IDE, right? And here's my README, right? And notice how C9. I need this for metadata, so don't delete this. But let's say I want to create some folders. It works almost like any other IDE. So I'm going to right-click here as an example, and if I want to add a folder or add to favorites, let's go New Folder. I can create a scripts folder just like before, right? So scripts. And I can do the same thing. I can go, right-click and add a new folder, right? Which would be content, just like we did before. And I can even add a new file, and I can right-click here to do that too. So I can say like new file, and so that it's an index.html file. And notice if I double-click on this file, it'll appear here on the side, just like it would normally appear if I was working locally. Now this is working remotely, but the great stuff about this service is this. I have Git available to me right off the bat. Git. I have Node available right off the bat if I want a Node thing, right? And I can do Control-C a couple times if I want to. It's platform independent, so it'll work Linux, Mac, and Windows, right? And it gives you a consistent environment to work on. So worst case scenario, you can't make Visual Studio Code work for you, or you just don't have an IDE handy and you still want to work around, you can still do that. And it also has Heroku tool belt built in. So if you want to link to Heroku and deploy there or whatever, you can certainly do that. Lots of really cool stuff with Cloud9, and it's all free for the first 2 workspaces, okay? You also have an immediate window where you can do some other stuff there, and you also can create a task runner. An example would be to run a little example or a preview here in the window itself. It's almost like a little browser within the browser, right, to test it out. So very cool. It'll support various file formats. So if I go File, New File or New from Template, it has a bunch of stuff here. Take a look. Text file, JavaScript files, all kinds of stuff. One thing it will not support off the get-go is TypeScript, right? So it does everything except for TypeScript off the get-go. They're getting closer to it, So if I was to make a TypeScript file in scripts, so if I go in here and I go new file, and I created like, you know, an app.ts file, right? And I double clicked, right? It's okay. It identifies what it is. Here's my TypeScript right here. And it even has code hinting that comes along with the TypeScript file, right? On the right-hand side. You just can't create it with the file menu, okay? One cool thing is if I type in on the command line here, if I go clear, and in the command line, because it's an integrated environment, like I said, this right here is Linux, right? It's right here. So even if you have a Windows machine, you're golden, you're running, right? And I want to create something like, if I want to check TSC, so I type TSC enter, TypeScript is built in. Now it's version 0.97.0, but it's your own little virtual machine. So I can do whatever I want. If I want to upgrade TypeScript, I can go something like this, npm install -g, and I can go TypeScript. Now you notice I'm typing, there's a bit of a delay, but that's okay. And if I do that, and when I do that, it's going to go through, and in the Ubuntu server, because that's what we're getting here, we're actually downloading and installing TSC, or TypeScript 1.75. So here it is, TSC -v. Notice that I'm at 0.9097 anyway. And that's the problem, right? I mean, you are working within a little confined environment, but it does work, right? Okay, here's something. So if I was to do something like this, if I was to make a task runner, and if I was to do TSC and whatever it is, whatever the name of the file is, here's my app.ts. It's a little test here, right? And let's say I make a class. So here's my class, and here's my person class, like we did before. Here's a, you know, kind of a review too. And inside my class, I have a constructor, right? And here it is. And as an example, I want to transpile this thing eventually. So here's my, I create a name property. So I'll say name, which is of type string. You know, I kind of create that. And in my constructor, I take in a name like we did before. So name, which is of type string. Notice I get code hinting here, right? Just like I normally would. And your local ID, I can say this dot name, because I didn't specify public or private, is equal to name. That's okay. And then I can also have another module or method that'll do that. So I'll say speaks like we did before. So again, this is just a test, and I'll say console.log. Let's do the same thing. You know, I'll say this dot name, right, plus says hello, right, just like we did last time. So this is all up online, and I can save, right, just like I normally would. All changes are saved, and it's up on. It's you know, kind of an ID online, right? So it's kind of cool. You don't have anything required. And I create a new person object. So I say, you know, var person lowercase is equal to new person, and we pass in my value, my string, if I can type, which is Tom, right? And I'll say person dot, I'll say person dot speaks. There we go. Okay, so cool. Everything is there. I got my person class. I don't have really an indexed HTML that's functional. So I can go back by index HTML and create that. If I type HTML and dash, you get kind of like a little bit of a template from the get-go. And if I want to add, if I think I can probably get something like Emmet. Remember we talked about Emmet last time with some shortcuts. Like let's say I say HTML greater than, and then inside my HTML I want to have two things. You know, a head plus a body, right? I want to have those two things. Well, it doesn't understand Emmet. Right, that's one thing it doesn't have. So there's some stuff it doesn't have that's in it, but it does do a little template, right? So you can always do one of those. Okay, so you have your head tag, and inside your head tag you have a title tag, and inside underneath your head tag you have a body tag. These are basics, right? And then I don't care about anything else. All I care about is linking my JavaScript file or my TypeScript file, which I haven't transpiled yet, into my file. So I'm going to do that by saying script. And notice it gives you a little bit of a template here when I do script, and I want to do my source code, which is scripts/app.js, because I don't do TS, right? And I save. Now I want to transpile because I can't do anything with my TS file. I'll do this on the command line. So I want to clear, clear, and when I clear, sorry, I'm not focusing on that. See, a little bit slow sometimes. When I clear, I want to do something like TSC. You know, I want to go into my workspace. If I do an ls, so a list of my files, and if I go into scripts, right, I can do this. I can go TSC app.ts, and if I do that and press enter, it should transpile from TypeScript to JavaScript. And notice that I get a app.ts file going to an app.js file. And if I double click on this, I get my transpilation, which is pretty close to what I want, right? So kind of cool. So you can do TypeScript online, right, without any kind of tools whatsoever. Worst case scenario, right? You just have to go into each different file that you modify, which is a pain in the ass a little bit, and do that. However, you can run a gulp. You can run gulp as a task runner. You can use Bower to install stuff. So let's say, for example, I want Bower, and I want to see if that's here. I can go clear, and if I type Bower, notice how most of the tools are already there, right? So it says report usage statistics. I'll say no, right? And so Bower is already there. So I can always do a Bower install, right? I can do something like Bower install. I don't have a sorry. I need a Bower RC file. So let's do this really quickly. I'm just trying to wrap this up quick because it's kind of we're kind of out of scope a little bit. But I'm showing this so that way you know what it's looking like, and I don't want it there. I want it kind of. If I drag it over here, does it do it? No, it doesn't, right? So there's some limitations, definitely. But let's type over here and go new file, and that's not where I want it. Hold on a second. I probably have to click on over here on the actual project itself. So new file, because I've got the other documents open. There it is. And if I go Bower RC, just like we did last time, here's my Bower RC. Double click on that. It doesn't have code hinting, so I can't do something like this. I can't do, well, you know what? I want to do that thing that I did in, I can't do control space. It won't allow me to do that, right? But what will allow me to do is do something like this. I can do, directory, like typing in the actual directory itself. This should be all review for you, by the way. And I can say something like scripts lib. I could say that, right, with Bower. And sorry, for Bower RC. Now that I've got that in there, and this is under the Bower RC file, it should be all review, by the way. I should be able to do one of these, Bower init, right, which should attach, and by the way, it's the wrong place. Let me just stop that, because I got to make sure it's in my main directory here, sorry. So let me just go out, one. And I'm in my main root, and now I'm going to do Bower init. And if I do Bower init, it's going to create a bower.json file just like normal. And I can just type kind of enter, 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 enter a bunch of times just to accept like we normally would. Here's my Bower init, and here's my bower.json file, right? Double click. All online, right? There it is right here. And now if I want to add in something like, and I'll clear the screen to do this. If I want to add in something else like jQuery, let's say, right? So I say Bower install jQuery -- save, right? And what it's going to do is going to go out to the web, grab jQuery, and install it here locally in your repository. And it's going to go under scripts lib, right? Just like it normally would. So all the controls that we've talked about so far, right, locally are available to you here on the web. So worst case scenario, I'm giving you another alternative for you if something messes up here. Huh? Okay, just putting it out there so that way you've seen it. You've seen C9, Cloud9, right? That's up there. And I can do everything. I can connect to Git. I can do everything we do on the command line. One thing you won't have is any visual UI tools that are available to Windows or Mac. You won't have that because it's a Linux Ubuntu backend. Okay. Questions around C9? And anyone have any comments or I never used that service? I know I've had that before. I'll never use that service. I'm a developer. I want my developer tools online, like locally, man. Right? The people have done that. They've said that a lot of times. We have to be open-minded because today tools are local. But tomorrow, from a cost perspective, companies may force you to code online. And also think about it this way: if they have a cloud service that you're coding on, they own it. They own everything. They own your code. They own your IDE. They do all your updates remotely. It's like software as a service, right? So you're truly on the cloud, programming for the cloud, right? Which is kind of the way things might go as things go on, especially from a return on investment and all kinds of money that's being spent on capital. Investors, especially from a company perspective, can move away from a capital expenditure model into this operating expense model where you pay subscription fees as opposed to capital expense maintenance, like having a maintenance guy to take care of your servers or something like that, or your software. So no need to upgrade. You do everything software as a service. You know what? If you trust them, yeah, you should trust them. They're okay. It's okay. For this class, you can trust them, right? Don't worry about trusting. If you don't trust them for yourself, it's a different story. But for this class, you're good, right? Yes, I'm going to show you that now. You would do it through GitHub, right? You do it through GitHub. And if you do it through Visual Studio itself, it's very easy to deploy, right? It's not 2 clicks, but you can deploy through GitHub. So you deploy to GitHub and you do an auto deploy. Let me show you that, right? All right, so you get access to Azure. Who has access to Azure? Anybody? You guys should have all signed up by now, right? Because that's like the easiest service ever. Yes, it takes a few minutes to do that. Right? I know there's some tricks around that. Just bear with it. It will work over a time period. Sometimes it takes a few minutes to get that done. All right. So if you haven't signed up for Azure, please sign up because we're going to do a little demo right here, and then we'll stop. Okay. Okay. So in order for me to get to Azure, there's a couple ways. Okay. So here's the first way. If I go manage.windowsazure.com, and if you have a subscription, it looks like this. Now I have a couple of subscriptions that I use. One for school and one for other things, right? So here's school. I'm logging in as myself, so it has to be a Microsoft account if you're going to log into to Azure. I believe you can't use your school account. So if your school account is not an Outlook account, you can't log in. All right, now this is the old portal. Okay, so you might see it this way if you go to manage.windowsazure.com. This is one way you might see it. You may also not have an option, but to go to the new portal, which looks like this. All right, so if I go to the new portal, you're going to go to portal.azure.com, and this is probably where you're going to see. All right. Now I'm pay-as-you-go, but that's the same as you. All right. If you notice on the left, right, when you go to your portal.azure.com, I want to create some kind of deployment target, which means I have to have a container for my website. Okay. I have a website that I'm going to deploy there in a second, but I need to have a container for that. And I'm going to use Cloud9 for that, by the way. Let's use Cloud9 and Azure, right? Okay, so I click this new, right? And it asks me what kind of deployment do I want to make. I want to choose web and mobile. And if you notice, I'm going to choose web app. So I've gone here, web app. Okay, those are the options you have, okay? It has to be a unique name that runs on azurewebsites.net, okay? It can't be the same name as somebody else. So if someone else chooses 3jsdemo.azurewebsites.net, like I'm going to do right now, then it won't work. Notice this one isn't taken. If I click create now, right, just with the defaults, I'm pay-as-you-go. You'll see in Azure, you'll see another service, right? I click create. If I'm good, if no one else has done that, it'll actually deploy the service. So I click create, and it's gonna run its deployment wizard right here, right? Notice it starts submitting its deployment. It started at 318, right? And it's gonna do this deploying web app thing, right? So once it's deployed the web app, this is the first piece. You need to have a container to hold your website, right? No container, no website, okay? That's the first part. By the way, if you're having trouble with the student account, you can always log in with subscription. If you have any kind of credit card whatsoever, they won't charge you unless you actually buy something like some Microsoft, SQL Server or something else like that. Web applications, even for pay-as-you-go, are free. All right. So please don't be afraid to use that, and you can trust Microsoft. They're not going to steal from you. All right. You can always go in for support and everything else. Okay. So hey, I've got my 3JS demo .azure websites, but I want to deploy, right? Because this isn't any good, right? Well, notice here on the bottom, there's a bunch of stuff you can do, right? An example would be continuous deployment under publishing, right? So it brings you to this page automatically, and underneath that page, there's something called continuous deployment. I want to click that. All right, in order for me to make this work, I need a GitHub repository that's live, all right? I have some that I can use, but remember, they have to be self-contained. So if I have to download with anything with Bower or anything else like that, you have to have a Bower.json file. All those files have to be in place before I do that. So let's check this out. Let's see if I can make it work with my with a GitHub account. So I'm going to go back over here. I'm just going to choose one of these things. I'm going to go to GitHub, right? And I don't have this 3JS demo yet, right? But I will make it. So let's make a new repository here. I'm going to put it under Centennial College, making sure that it's the right organization, right? And we're just going to call this COMP392, and we'll say it'll be lesson 2, right? But it'll be part 2 because we have part 1, and part 1 is kind of an example. And lesson 2, part 2, maybe what I'll say is instead of lesson 2 part 2, I'll call lesson 2, Azure. So we can separate that. Lesson 2 Azure. So we know it's the Azure deployment, GitHub, right? And I create that repository. So here's my repository. I have to have some kind of repo online, right? And here it is. Here's my Azure COMP392 lesson 2 Azure, right? That's what I called it. Okay, cool. So I've got this. Now I've got to link my C9, my Cloud 9 services, which is right here. I got to link it to GitHub, right? Well, I do it the same exact way, right? So here, I need to have a couple things to make this work. One of the things is I need a gitignore file. So let's just lower this down. And by the way, I haven't tested this thing out, so I don't know if it's going to work. Here's my index.html. Let's take a look at it. It's just very simple. All I do is a JavaScript file, and I pump out some stuff to the command line. I'm just going to call the JS file, so I got to test it, right? If I click run up here on C9, if I click run, it's going to ask me to do a cloud service. It's going to try this out. Notice that there's no node, right? So it's going to start Apache as a default, right? Because I'm running index.html, right? And it's going to run it in another window eventually. It's going to take it easy and run it in another window. So if I want to preview the application, right? So preview my running application, I can click preview, and in the window here, notice that I get a bit of a preview in here, right? Now, if I right-click and go, inspect, you're not going to get what you want because you're going to inspect the whole document because it is a web page, right? But if I click debugger or one of those, you can see that it has debugging and live. I'll see some live stuff here. I could output it to a screen, but it is actually running. We'll leave it later on. If there was a problem, it would come up with a problem. Okay, cool. Now let's set up this thing. Notice how it is running. I want to go back to my bash, my thing, and set up my GitHub. But in order for me to do that, like I said last time, I need a gitignore file. So up on the project, I'm going to right-click, and I'm going to put a new file, and we're going to call it a .gitignore file. Here we are, gitignore. And if I double-click, I want to include some basic things there, right? Some basic things in my gitignore file. Right, so how can I do that? Well, and by the way, I'm going to click on the browser and show you this in a second. One is I definitely need, if I'm using a Mac, a ds_store that I'm going to add into my gitignore file, ds_store, right? I also want to make sure I ignore anything to do with Node. So Node modules, I definitely want to ignore those. And I definitely want to ignore C9. Any kind of C9 stuff from Cloud 9, I want to ignore that too, right? And you know what? I don't want to put anything from my scripts lib folder up because it should download automatically through Bower. So scripts, by the way, we'll try this a couple times, lib. So anything in scripts lib, I want it to ignore, right? Oh, that's bad. Hold on. No, that's fine. That's fine. The scripts lib, we'll grab that. So all I have there is jQuery. It will take my script, though, my TS files, right? Okay, cool. So I have nothing in scripts lib. I ignore all those things, and I press save. So I've got my gitignore file. Now I can set up my Git just like normal. So I'm going to clear my screen. When I clear my screen, I'm going to say Git init just like normal, and it's going to set up a repository, right? And then I notice that it gives that hidden folders right here, the .git folder that you normally wouldn't see, but it's right here. Okay. And now I'm going to do something like this. I'm going to say git add dot, which adds everything to the Git repository locally here to C9, and then git commit -m, and I'm going to add in an initial commit, just like we normally do, like you've seen me do a bunch of times here. Okay, cool. So I did that, and now what I want to do is I want to connect it to my GitHub, which is right here. Right here's my GitHub, and normally what I would do is copy this whole line here, like this, so I don't have to type it. Go back to C9. And paste it in, right? So there it is, and press enter. So that kind of creates my remote connection, okay? Now I'm going to push it. So git push -u origin master. And if I typed everything correctly, it's going to push my my stuff up when I type in my password, my username and password, of course, for the first time, because C9 doesn't know who I am. So it puts at github.com, or how about hotmail.com, which would be better. My password, and now it pushes it up to Git. So I'm pushing it right from C9, Cloud 9, right to GitHub. Right. So if I go to GitHub now and I refresh, I have a repository with an index.html that is exposed. Here's the trick. Exposed index.html. If my index.html is not exposed, we got a problem, Lucy, right? I'll tell you right now. And the reason why I'm saying we got a problem is because I can't deploy, I have to have an endpoint somehow with Azure, right? Okay, cool. So I've got my index.html deployed, and now I want to go back to Azure, and we'll go to the one that's here. And now that I've clicked continuous deployment, on the right here, on the right of Microsoft Azure, the portal here, right? And by the way, this is being recorded, so if you miss it, you can always look at this again, right? I click on this thing, and it's going to take me to where I want to get my continuous deployment from, which is GitHub. So I want to choose GitHub here. And then from GitHub, I want to authenticate as myself. Here it is. And I want to choose, you know, as an example, I'm going to choose OK here because I've already authenticated, right? And if, by the way, if there's any problems, it's going to show me that there's a problem. So choose GitHub. That's cool. I'm going to choose myself. So this is myself. So change my account, right? So this is my account. If I want to choose not this one, but I want to look at something else, I could. Choose your organization. It's not Ciliopolis, right? It's got to be Centennial College because that's where my stuff is. And when I choose my Centennial College, it should pull up my project, which is COMP392 Lesson 2 Azure. So you see it actually populates here. Now you have to give it, for the first time, you'd have to give Azure access to do all this. It'll ask you, can you please provide credentials to give access, right? If I click on Lesson 2 Azure, and what it's going to do is it's going to find that once I've got that done, it's going to look at the master branch, and I'm going to press OK. Now, what it's going to do is it's going to set up continuous deployment from GitHub directly to Azure. Notice that it says successfully set up continuous deployment. Okay, that's cool. That means that if I click on 3jsdemo.azurewebsites.net and I launch it in a new window, it should give me an app that's been successfully created, like this, right? And it takes a second sometimes to come up. So notice there's nothing there because I had a blank index.html file, right? Let's look at, if I get what I said, Tom speaks, it says Tom says hello. That's what we should have on the command line. So I'm gonna right click here, like I normally would do, and go into inspect. And on the bottom, if I did this successfully, Tom says hello. So my application is physically running. If you actually go up here right now and check it out, go up to 3jsdemo.azurewebsites.net. My application is live, right? And you'll be able to see, if you actually go into the command line here on the console, you can see that Tom says hello, right? This is a very simple example, but example of continuous deployment, right? So what does continuous deployment mean? That means if I change GitHub, Azure's watching it, and if anything changes, it automatically redeploys to Azure without me changing anything. I don't have to use FTP or nothing like that. It automatically redeploys to Azure, which is super awesome, right? Okay, let's check that out and see if it works. That's why I recommend Azure, because it's a free service for students, okay? So let's take a look at this. So I'm going to go back to my C9. Here's my Cloud9, right? And I want to change some stuff because it's kind of ugly. I want to go back into my index.html site. Here it is, right? And in my index.html, I don't have a title, so let's add a title. This is my 3JS demo for Azure, right? And we'll add in an H1 tag because we didn't have that in before. So it's kind of simple to do. So H1, a header tag, and we'll kind of add in there, you know, 3JS demo on Azure. That's all you're going to see. And I'll save that. Now, I haven't done anything yet, and I'm going to update GitHub. So again, I would just do it like normal. So clear, and I'm going to say git add dot git commit -m, and I'll say updated index.html, just like we normally would. And then I'm going to push it to GitHub, git push origin master. And when I do that, once I'm done pushing, right, I should probably have configured this a little differently, but you can configure this so it doesn't ask you. What it does is it takes it, pushes it to GitHub, and then here's my Azure websites, right? Here's 3JS demo. I'm not doing anything. I don't have to go back to Azure websites again. If I refresh, I see it instantly, okay? And that's the deployment pattern, okay? Think of it this way. You deploy once, you modify your code, and bam, it's live, right? And you get an unlimited amount with Azure. You can make as many of these web apps as you like for free. So I want you to do this. This is part of your thing. Now, you don't have to use Azure if you're against Microsoft. If you're a Microsoft hater, right, you can use Heroku. You can use DigitalOcean. You can use whatever service out there you like. But Azure is free and easy. Questions? Covered a lot, right, in this first hour. I covered assignment 1, right, in your requirements. I covered Cloud9 as an intro, right? So you can use Cloud9 as an online development environment instead of using something local, because you know what? As users, we never know where we're going to need to write our code. You do things on Cloud9, even if you forget your stuff, you're good to go. And you can also use Cloud9 to get your GitHub stuff from GitHub into Cloud9, right? So even if you deploy on GitHub and you forget your computer, you can still work on your code on Cloud9 instead of your local environment, right? So you can do that. Yeah, I will. I'll do this in the next video, right? And then after you set up with Cloud9, you work on Cloud9, you set up a Git repository, you deploy to Git, everything is online, right? You're not even working locally at all. You can work on any dummy machine, a Chromebook, all right? And then all of a sudden, you deploy on GitHub, and you have auto-deploy to Azure, so you're live, and you're live within, what, 10 minutes, right, for my deployment time? It's really cool, and it's modern. The modern way we do web development these days, I always use a cloud service whenever I sell stuff to my clients. I never anymore use a local service unless the client already is there. And then I'm always going to be talking to them about migrating. I'm going to talk to that client to death about migrating to something like Azure or Google platform or Amazon because of availability. Those 3 platforms have the highest availability. That means chances are it's not going to go down, right? If Amazon, Google, or Microsoft goes down, there's an apocalypse, right? We have a zombie apocalypse out there, some kind of loss of power across the United States and Canada, right? There's no other way that it'll be, right? So if those 3 go down, that's bad. And that's why I tell customers, if you want 100% or near 100% uptime, 99.99, not 5 nines, but 99.99, all right, availability, uptime, right? You're golden with one of the big 3, okay? Actually, even with some of the smaller players like DigitalOcean, you're golden. And that's why I recommend cloud services over any local provider, right? Okay, that's it for me for this time. Let's take a short break. I'll deal with people who have connectivity problems and other issues, and then we'll come back and we'll do some 3JS, okay?